Hi, I'm Marcia from the Bedford Branch of the Monroe County Library System, and I'm here today with Lannie Stabile, and I'm so glad to have you. You are one of my favorites. You did an author showcase here for me before at Bedford. You just recently did Writers on the River. You have done poetry, speeches, and slams. You are pretty much a regular constant here at the Monroe County Library System, and we love having you.
I love being here. I love Bedford.
So I just wanted to do a little chat today, talk a little bit about you, a little bit about your writing style, and different things going on with you. When did you first realize that you wanted to be an author?
So I was 12, I would say. I was kind of dabbling in stories in third grade when I was 8, but I didn't really have that ding until I was 12, and I was in 6th grade, and we did this poetry unit. And I wrote this poem called Long Live the King, and it was about a lion being like the king of the jungle. It was super cute, and everybody really liked it. And I was getting this praise, and I was like, wait, I might actually be good at this. So then I started writing more and more.
So it was a pretty clear direction early on for you.
Yes.
So that, how long have you been writing since you've been 12?
Yeah, and that would be how many years? 23 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's wonderful. How long does it typically take you to write a book?
Okay, so if I need to focus on something, I can get hyper-focused. And so if I've got a project, I can get it done pretty quickly. For example, I wanted to write a chapbook, a poetry chapbook once, and I decided I was going to give myself a month's time. And I did that. I did the research, and I wrote out all of the not chapter titles, but all the poem titles, and I wrote toward those titles, and I got it done within a month. As for a book, a full-length book, I'd probably say that it takes me about a year to write that, and to get it edited to where I want it.
Sure, with rewrites and things too.
Yep.
What would be your approach to writing or your writing style?
Okay, I am not the kind of person that sits down and writes every day. That's kind of challenging to me. So most of the time I let inspiration just come to me, and then I write. I'll be listening to the radio and I'll mishear a lyric, and it makes me laugh, and I'm like, okay, well, what if I wrote, and so I'll write about that. Or if I'm at a library and there are plants all around me, and I'm like, what if the plants attack me? So I'll write a story about that. Unless I do have a focused project, and then I just go for it. But yeah, basically, I'm kind of let inspiration hit me kind of person.
So inspiration's everywhere for you, then?
Oh, for sure, yes.
You're just always writing stories in your head.
Yeah, and then I go to Google Docs, and I literally write one sentence, and I come back to that.
And then, so that's great. I won't forget it. Yeah, you go back, and then you build a story is born.
Correct.
So do you use things like outlines or drafts, or you just keep updating?
An outliner. I tried, during the lockdown in 2020, I outlined a children's book, a middle grade book, and I did stick to it, and I ended up writing this entire book in 2020. However, I haven't revisited because it's not the way that I write. I'm what we call a pantser, so I'm just I jump off the cliff, and I'm like, how's this story gonna land? I don't know.
So it just kind of changes as it goes, too.
No outlines.
Do you typically develop your characters first or your plot first, or are you just working off your inspiration, I guess? But
I would say typically it's plot. As much as I love characters when I'm reading, if there aren't characters that I can attach myself to, I'm not very into it. But as a writer, the characters are secondary to me.
Sure.
It's more about the plot.
And they could probably change in theory, too, with the direction that the plot goes to.
Yes, and the characters end up, they get built from the ground up, and they start telling you what to do.
Yeah, the story comes to life, for sure. What would you say, what's your schedule like when you're writing? I know you were just talking about, getting things done in a month, but when you said you took, a year, what is your typical writing schedule during that year?
I don't have one, especially now that I'm a newer mom. It's I am stealing time. So I recently was in Youngstown, Ohio, and I did a workshop about promoting your book. And one of the questions that the people asked me was well, when do you carve in time to promote your book? And I said, you're not going to like the answer. I do it while I'm working. because I work from home right now, and we've got some downtime. So when I'm not working on a specific thing, I'm like, okay, let me send this email, or let me jot down this idea. So I kind of juggle it while I'm working. So I guess 8 to 5,
Sure, during
when
the
I
day.
have some time to write. That's my
Sure.
schedule.
I guess that's better than 2 a.m. So
Yeah.
it just depends. What would you say is your most interesting writing quirk?
Before we jumped on the camera, you were talking about how you love, like, you're just reading the story, and then all of a sudden, like, there's this twisted line in there. And I'd say, like, it's kind of like that, where I'm a very bubbly person, right? Like, you know that. I'm pretty happy. But I do have a twisted mind. So when I'm writing these stories, and they're very dark stories, I will throw in a comedic line, or just something to think about, because that's who I am. Like, I'm writing about these dark things, but I also infuse it with humor, and I think that's probably one of my favorite quirks about me.
It's probably one of mine too. I did mention that before because you're reading along and it's really serious, and all of a sudden you just laugh out loud, or you're like, oh, and your mind goes there. It's just great. I do. I think we have a lot of similarities, and even listening to your answers, I'm like, I don't outline either. I can be hyper focused, but normally I'm not. I'm listening to you, and I'm like, oh yes, we have so much in common. What does like writer's block mean to you? Do you ever have that, or any writer's block, or do you just work through it?
So what I do with writer's block, because you can't always just write exactly what you want. That would be lovely, and maybe Stephen King or somebody who's very practiced can do something like that, but I can't. So if I find myself getting stuck, I will either kind of turn off that editing brain of mine, because I am that person where I want everything to be perfect, like the first time it comes out, and it can't always be. It can't often be, honestly. So I just go, hey, I know it's not perfect right now, but just get the idea out as crappy as you can, and you can come back to it and you can fix it. And if I'm not in that space, if that's just something I can't do right now, and I want it to be perfect, and I can't shut that off, then I go to a different project. And
Put it down, pick it up later.
Keep it writing, and if for some reason I can't write, then I'll read.
Oh, perfect. Just to kind of detach yourself from it for that too.
Yeah, there are these little tricks that you learn to get away from the writer's block.
So you mentioned you write during work, during the day. What about your writing area? Do you use lighting or music, or do you just kind of sneak it in where you can, where you're at, or do you have a certain kind of writing background?
So, I write in our family room, which it's got this big door wall, so the light's always coming in. There's a light behind me, or a window behind me, which is very tricky when I'm on Zoom. They can't see me, but it's nice to have that lit space. So I'm not like a dungeon troll, which I do like to be sometimes, but like it's not. Then you get into seasonal depression. So I'm trying this thing where I've got light all the way around me. So that's how I've been writing this past year. And then I tend to put on some brown noise from Spotify, or some like rain sounds, because if I can hear any song in English, then I'm distracted.
Right.
So I also can do like French jazz.
Okay.
Because I don't know any French.
Sure.
So it's not going to distract me. Or I do brown noise.
Okay, that's wonderful too and interesting. Do you have anything that you eat or drink while you write, or?
Water. I love water. My wife recently was like, hey, what's your favorite drink? And I said water. And she's like, okay, but what's your favorite fun drink? And I was like, orange juice? She was trying to get me to say an alcoholic drink.
Sure, you're just like, water it is. Water for the win. What do you think about NaNoWriMo?
I love NaNoWriMo. I think it's a wonderful goal. I love setting goals for myself. I personally I've never completed NaNoWriMo. I have kind of tried, but I'm the kind of person that I don't write fast. So 1,600, 1,700 words a day is way too much for me personally. And I recognized that early on in NaNoWriMo. So I decided instead to give myself an alternative challenge. And so I will do like write 100 words a day, or this year it's write 100-word stories, one 100-word story a day. Am I on track? No. But do I have like maybe 5 or 6 new 100-word stories? Yes, absolutely. Right. So I'm better off than where I was in the beginning of the month. And I do that for like Lent too. I'm not Catholic, but I like the challenge of Lent, so when that comes around, I always do something like, okay, for the next 40 days, I'm going to give up meat, or for the next 40 days, I'm going to write every day, or, I always love challenging myself, because even if I don't hit that goal, I get something out of it.
Yeah, more than had you not in the first place. That's wonderful.
I think NaNoWriMo was great for the community as well. And people meet other writers, and here you guys have a NaNoWriMo group, right, during the month of November.
Yeah, writing circles.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to share, or anything that we didn't cover?
This is where I blank.
Writer's block.
I just want to say that I really appreciate the community that you've built, and that you have invited me into. Like, I remember, I think it was last year at this point where I reached out and I said, hey, I would love to do a reading at your branch, and you're like, we're not really doing in-person events right now, but let me get back to you. And then you did, and we had one event, then we had 2 events, and we had 3, and I think this is the 4th at this point. I just love working with you.
Oh, I love it too. Anytime we have you, it's great. So I really hope that all your readers and your fans, I hope you gain new readers and fans from this, because they will definitely love your work. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you the next time.
Thanks, Marsha. It's great talking to you.
Yeah.
So for NaNoWriMo, as we all know, that you write 50,000 words in the month of November. I am not a fast writer. I do not do that. However, I like to participate in NaNoWriMo in a different way by giving myself challenges every year. For example, this year I am doing 100-word stories, like 1 each day, or trying to. I am not on target, but it doesn't matter. Like, writing is fun, and hitting any kind of goals is the point, in my opinion, of NaNoWriMo. So I wanted to celebrate NaNoWriMo by reading one of the challenges that I have participated in the last couple of years. There was one by Cemetery Gates Media, I believe is the name, where they said, hey, can you write a horror story as a Hallmark Channel romantic comedy, like one of those Christmas rom-coms? And I said, absolutely, I'm going to do this challenge. And so I wanted to just set the scene where there's this woman, Cordy Laramie, who just lost her father, who she's very close to, and her father owns a bakery, which now she's owning now. And but she's not a good baker, so she's practicing her father's famous gingerbread cookies for the season. This is called Muck or Nettles, an excerpt. Later, alone in the back room of the bakery, her apron snug and colorful around her waist, Cordy attempted her father's famous gingerbread recipe. As she broke the eggs into the mixture, she thought about the mahogany shell that now encased her father. As she peppered in the cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice, she considered the handful of dirt she had thrown onto the coffin as a final gesture. As she blended it all together, she thought of the emotions stirring within her. With a cleaver and a bit too much force, she split the ball of dough she'd created from the mixture and set one half to the side. She dusted the counter with flour and rolled the other ball out into a thick, flat oval. Delicately, she pressed a metal cookie cutter into the flesh of the dough, revealing a perfectly shaped gingerbread man. She did it again and again until she had half a dozen cut out. Then she peeled back the leftover dough and rolled it into another ball. To make room for the baking sheet, Cordy reached to move the cleaver out of the way, but it stuck her. She looked at the pricked thumb. There was no blood, only a tiny slice in the skin. There seemed to be no need for a bandage, so she continued what she had been doing. She placed the 6 tiny men onto a baking sheet and pushed them into the preheated oven. There we go, boys, she cooed. As Cordy closed the door to the oven, she heard the call bell ding at the front counter and a voice call out, "Hello?" She dusted off a bit of the flour that had settled on her arms and apron and moved into the store to greet the customer. A man with a prominent nose and impressive jawline, who looked a bit like a young Vincent Price, stood at the counter. Cordy felt heat creep into her flour-dusted cheeks. Hello, she greeted the handsome stranger. Why, hello, the man repeated with a smile, dripping with molasses. Cordy took in the pressed blue suit in front of her. The man smelled of money, and that both frightened and intrigued her. How can I help you? Cordy asked. A strong hand pushed an expensive-looking business card her way. The name's Clark St. James. I present profiterole profiteering, and I think it's more how I can help you. Cordy wanted to trust him. It crossed her mind that she shouldn't. After all, this man was obviously Mrs. Macomber's nephew, and that was enough to write him off. But the rich brown eyes boring into her told her that she could. They were the color of perfectly baked gingerbread, and to Cordy, gingerbread always felt like home. How can you help me? She asked. Clark took a perfunctory glance around the bakery and returned a warm gaze to Cordy. Our company is looking to acquire a charming small-town store just like yours. We're prepared to offer quite a bit. Selling wasn't off the table. When her father died suddenly of a heart attack just a few days prior, on top of grief, Cordy's mind filled with panic. She had never had to run the business alone. Hell, she wasn't even that great of a baker. She had half a mind to cut her losses and run. But there was another part of Cordy that wanted to make her father proud. Muck or nettles, she thought. I'm not interested in selling, Mr. St. James. Cordy pushed the business card toward the man. And if you don't mind, I have baking to get back to. The handsome man only smiled. It seems I've caught you at a disadvantage. I'll come another time. Cordy was sure if he had been wearing a hat, he would have tipped it. Back in the kitchen, Cordy pulled the gingerbread men from the oven and set them on the counter to cool. While she waited, she prepared the royal icing. Her father, who had surprisingly valued simplicity in his baking, never decorated his famous gingerbread men with colored icing or various candied toppings, so neither did Cordy. When they were cool, Cordy spent the next few minutes decorating 5 of the 6 cookies. She drew little bow ties and buttons, and with thin, upturned lines, she made every one of them smile. On the 6th, Cordy decided to switch things up. She drew eyeglasses with round frames between thick eyebrows and a bushy mustache. She made this man smile too, but his smile was broad and contagious. As a last detail, she drew an apron. I miss you so much, Daddy. She rubbed the soft pad of her thumb along the cookie, and a line of red smeared across the gingerbread man's left eyebrow. It gave the appearance of a grizzled scar. Cordy cursed and crossed the room to the first aid box secured to the wall. She reached for a fingertip bandage, but stopped when she heard a tender, lamenting voice. I've missed you too, Cupcake. The bandage, unwrapped and peeled, fell from Cordy's hands and stuck adhesive side down on the tile. Cordy's slip-resistant sneakers grounded further into the floor as she pivoted to look around the room. Hello? She ventured. Is anyone there? It's me, said the voice. Cordy again looked around the room, but she saw nothing, only her panicked expression in the reflective stainless steel appliances. Over here, the voice prompted. Cordy cautiously walked toward the counter, focusing on the small object moving in the center of the tabletop. She couldn't believe her eyes as the 6th gingerbread man stood on 2 sturdy gingerbread legs and waved at her with an excited gingerbread arm. It's me, the cookie said, your father. And with a yelp and one exceptional, not completely unexpected swoon, the poor woman passed out. So that is, again, an excerpt from Muck and Metals, from Something Dead and Everything, my story collection on grief. Thank you so much.